We're now live.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everybody, and once again, apologies for the delayed start to this meeting. Unfortunately, we're dealing with technology, but thank you for all attending. Welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Act Subcommittee. I'm Louise Prince, solicitor to the committee for today's hearing. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Members of the public will be able to hear the audio of the meeting and view the papers shown on the screen. The meeting is being held using remote technology, and should any committee members experience technical difficulties during the meeting, they should immediately contact the designated IT officer on the number they've already been supplied with. Everyone is requested to mute their microphones unless asked to speak. Please only use the chat function to indicate the desire to speak. Do not use it for anything else, so that it is clear who is asking to speak, and the debate has to be heard by those listening to the audio feed. The Chair will interpret the Council's existing standing orders in light of the requirements of remote participation with advice from the monitoring officer prior to making a ruling. At the start of the meeting, I will ask members of the committee, officers and those making representations to confirm their presence. Everyone that speaks during the meeting, including members of the committee and officers, are asked to introduce themselves each time before they speak. This is so those listening know who is speaking. I'll start with committee members. If I can ask committee members to confirm they're here. Councillor Roy Oldcroft, who is substituting for Councillor Dave Tremellan for this morning's meeting.
Yes, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Simon Jones. Councillor Simon Jones, are you present?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry, it's the dreaded you're on mute.
Thank you. And Councillor Keith Roberts.
Yeah, present.
Thank you. I'll now go to the officers. Ross O'Neill, can you confirm that you're present?
Yes, Public Protection Officer licensing.
Thank you. Jessica Moores.
Yep, I'm here.
Thank you. And Emily Marshall.
Yeah, I confirm I'm present.
Thank you. And now for those making representations, Andrew Bevan, who's representing the applicants for today, can you confirm that you're here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Thank you. Sue Smith, please.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. Michael Tree.
Yes.
Thank you. And Yaworth Waters, who's representing the Everest Hall.
Yes, I'm here.
Thank you. I shall now turn to the items on the agenda. So the first item is the election of the chair for today's meeting. Are there any nominations for the position of chairman, please?
I propose Keith Roberts, that's Roy Oldcroft.
Thank you. And can I have a seconder for that, please?
Councillor Simon Jones, I will second Keith.
Thank you. Where are we up to? Okay. So now over to the chair for the meeting.
Could I just thank Councillor Keith Roberts? I'm taking the chair. I just thank my fellow colleagues for the responsibility of chairing this meeting. I just wanted to address you before we start. And is everybody hearing me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. The committee has read and considered the representations and evidence submitted by all parties in relation to this application. Therefore, presentation should be succinct and kept up to a brief summary of key points. There is no need to read out written representations or reiterate the details of written representations at great length. The chair will intervene if it is felt that the presentations are becoming overly long, are going off track or do not relate to the application being considered. The procedure for the hearing has been circulated in general. We will aim to keep to this order of business to ensure the timely and fair. Bear with me a minute. Let me start again. The procedure for the hearing has been circulated in general. We will aim to keep to this order of business to ensure the timely and fair conduct of the hearing for all parties. If it is felt necessary during the course of the hearing, the committee may make the decision to deviate from the procedure. This is at the committee's discretion. There are opportunities throughout the hearing for each party to ask questions of others following their presentations. Please ensure that you use this opportunity to ask questions only and not to make any further points or statements. It is for the chair to decide if questions are appropriate and relate to the matter in hand. Any behaviour considered to be disruptive by the chair may lead to parties being asked to leave the hearing. Does anybody have any questions regarding the hearing process or how the hearing will be conducted? Do I hear anything? Right, I now address the licensing officer. Ross, have any of the representations made been withdrawn?
Ross O'Neill, no representations, all 11 representations stand, and 3 members of the public that representation are here today. There were 4 other comments made by authorities, but the 3 were agreed by the applicant, hence, which is in the report.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Ross. And questions to other parties that are present in the meeting. Would any party present like to withdraw their representation?
No.
No, hear nothing. Right, okay. I'll now go on then. Item 2 on the agenda, disclosable peculiar interests. Members are reminded to disclose any peculiar interest in any matters to be discussed which is not included in the register of interests and leave the meeting prior to the matter being discussed. I've got no interest. Simon Jones, have you any interest?
No interests.
And my colleague Roy Hawcroft?
No peculiar interests.
Thank you. Right. Now, so the application for the premises licence for the community pavilion at Lambay Waterdine, Knighton. I now ask the licensing officer to present the report. Thank you, Ross.
Good morning all. Ross O'Neill, Public Protection Officer, working for the licensing team. So, Chair and Subcommittee, you're here to consider a new premises licence application for the community premises at Lambay Waterdine. It's been applied for by a charity at the community premises, and they've also put an application to disapply the DPS, which they're entitled to for the committee to be the designated premises supervisor. It's a newly built timber frame building which went through planning in 2017 and was granted, included recreational use on the planning, which included and can have the sale of alcohol from the planning point of view. Further details are of the report that's been written and submitted already. It's a rural location, Lambay Waterdine, south of Shropshire, and Appendix A and B provide location maps and photographs to show this. The original application is attached to the report and that can be viewed along with the plan submitted by the applicant. They are Appendix C and D. And you will see from the building there is the plan has been provided to the building and a small balcony or terraced area is included, not the external outside other than the balcony, and they've applied for on-premises consumption of alcohol only, plus some activities. As the community premises, they can supply the DPS, as already mentioned. The application, constitution and draft agreement can be found at Appendix E. And during the consultation period, 3 authorities have put representations in to request tighter conditions. They were happy with the applicant's conditions, but they wanted the words amended to strengthen. And that's, you can see that from the original application to the report that I've submitted. You can see the varied wording between the 2 of them. So that was from trading standards, the police and environmental protection. All was agreed with the applicant, and none of those authority figures are here because they're all happy with how it's been processed. There have been 11 representations of other persons, all are neighbours or of a similar location to the premises. Appendix F shows a premises map where the premises is, plus the representations have been highlighted for the committee members to see where those locations are in relation to the premises. All representations are for you to consider, which fall within public nuisance, and there is a little bit of section on public safety. They've all been given the benefit of the doubt, particularly in the public safety aspect, for you to consider, and they're Appendix G to Q. These have all been sent to the applicant as well to consider, and a letter was sent to all of the representations for clarification of the application, provide further details. No alterations or changes were proposed, only the 3 authorities that changed the conditions and amended them were agreed as per the report. The Appendix R is the letter that the committee or the trustee put to the representations. The report was then written and the agenda was published. You have since then received 3 documents off the applicant. There's three trustees, Bevan, Quilt and Bailey. They've all put letters in for you to consider, which you were sent yesterday. Also, they were sent to persons making representations. They are aware of what you've seen. You also all have received further supporting documents off Allison, Tree and Smith. And again, that's been sent to the applicants. They're aware of what you've also seen from yourselves. And again, it's that for you to consider and the benefit of the doubt. Mr. Bevan is here to talk on behalf of the trustee today. Ms. Smith is representing herself. Mr. Waters is representing the Everest Hall Committee, and Mr. Tree is representing himself and 5 other persons that submitted representation. Also, you received an addition to my report to clarify what the applicant applied for, but due to the premises location and the internal aspects and the highly unlikely chance that 500 people cannot get in that premises, you've been made aware of what would actually be licensable if the license was granted in full today. So that's been addition to my report. Advice was given to all parties, both the applicant and persons making representation. So the reason you're here today is to consider and determine the application. To do this, you must give appropriate weight to the steps that are necessary to promote the licence objectives. You must also consider the representations, and you must also look at the 182 guidance, the Licensing Act, and the Shropshire Council's licensing policy to determine what you determine today. You then may grant the application in full or in part, subject to such conditions deemed necessary and appropriate to the 4 licensed objectives, or refuse if deemed appropriate, again in relation to the 4 licensed objectives. Please note that any decision needs to be justified and supporting evidence after to all involved, and all persons can appeal the decision. That's me done, Chair.
Thank you, Ross. Thank you for your report. Right. Those present will be given the opportunity to ask any relevant questions. Please indicate on the chat function, or if you can't do that, just put your hand up and hopefully I might be able to see you, or just call out. Please indicate on the chat function if you wish to speak. Please remember that when asked to speak, you should unmute your microphones, state your name and remute on completion. The order I've got this is other persons. Well, we've got no other persons because we've got speakers. So there's a sorry.
Chair, I think other persons refers to the people that have made representations.
Yeah, that would refer to them. So the people that have asked to speak, have they got any questions of the licensing officer after the report he's just given? No, there's no questions there. The applicant, Mr. Bevan, have you got any questions of the licensing officer?
No, thank you.
Thank you. And committee, my colleagues, have you got any questions of the licensing officer? No, it's really quiet out there this morning. Okay. So
Chair, Louise Prince speaking. I've just done the chat function. There's 2 people have indicated they want to speak now, so Councillor Jones and Mr. Waters.
Yeah, I've just got them, they've just come up. Yeah, it's slow where I am and it's raining. Councillor Simon Jones, you want to speak?
Sorry, yeah, I think it's Mr. Waters should actually speak first as another person. So
Yeah, okay then. Okay.
I'll hold back.
Mr. Waters, do you want to ask a question of the licensing officer?
Yes, the main concern I've got on behalf of the Everest Hall Committee is a duplicate of an alcohol license when we've already got an alcohol license annually at the Everest Hall. Will this do any damage to Everest Hall licensing? That business is taken away from us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Waters. That's a rather awkward one for any licensing officer to answer that, but we'll come back to you, Ross, unless you want to answer it now.
Yeah, Ross O'Neill, that's not a question. That's to be determined when everyone gets their chance to speak and representation across.
Yeah, thank you for confirming that. We'll go to Councillor Simon Jones now then.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Simon Jones. Just a quick question, Ross, for a bit of clarification. Following receipt of the addendum to the original report that you sent, just for clarification, if a licence wasn't awarded, would the premises still be able to run the just bear with me a minute, run the live music indoors and films indoors up to 11 o'clock without any license at all? It's really just to clarify that.
Yeah, the films is a separate entity due to the profit side of things, hence why that's still on the application and they've applied for that, and that will be the hours. In relation to the live music, the dance, the plays, the recorded music, due to it being a community premises, they're not licensable activities for under 500 persons, hence why I've put that addition to the report for you to just be mindful of, that we're not talking about those activities between the hours of 8 and 11 o'clock at night. The applicant hasn't outlined the outside of the premises, which could potentially hold a lot more people, maybe thousands of people, but that's not what they've applied for. It's just the inside of the building, which I haven't got sight of the fire risk assessment, but looking at the actual size of the premises, it doesn't appear that, well, they can't fit 500 people in the premises.
Right, thank you. It was just that clarification. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? No. Right. We'll move on now then, and I'll ask the applicant, Mr. Bevan, to introduce himself and present his case, please.
Thank you very much. My name's Andrew Bevan. I'm a trustee of Lamborghini Community Trust. Two other trustees, as you're aware, have written in, weren't in a position for whatever reason to take part in the event this morning. Basically, we've built the community pavilion with considerable local voluntary labour and obviously a very generous grant from the Shropshire Leader funding, as we've outlined. The background to it, if you like, was an opportunity which arose in the parish with the production of a community-led plan that you're also aware of. It's the first time that had been carried out within our community, and it was quite interesting because it, for the first time ever, gave the opportunity for all people in the parish to be heard, rather than what can so often happen in these sort of small communities where a few people get heard a lot and others don't get heard necessarily at all. It was somewhat proven by the fact that the committee doing the questionnaire put an awful lot of effort into making a very sort of good questionnaire. The committee was made up of people not on other organisations, quite a new committee, and it received the highest response rate in the whole of Shropshire. From that, we as a community trust were very keen to see if there was anything we could pull from that, because we do have quite significant, or did have, unspent funds. We were successful in supporting people with certain needs and educationally, but we weren't finding a very easy way to support the general public of our community. And we felt that a lot of people weren't able to benefit from these funds that we were holding as individuals, but there was now an opportunity to provide a facility which could become a sort of social hub for the community, and be used by families for parties and sporting events, and also evolve into what the community might need going forward in the future. So, you know, the remit to our architect was to design for us a relatively open building to provide toilet facilities, small little kitchen facility, and a room which was available for sports and whatever functions. The idea was to be up to date with it, you know, compliant with all the building regulations, obviously, with a new build. We've also gone to a lot of expense of the trust, around £18,500 to install a sustainable heating system, which is a ground source heat pump. And this, you know, we strongly believe part of our mission is to be sustainable. And we believe we built for the future on a field that we were very fortunate to have gifted to the community. And you know, this is what we're trying to now achieve. And of course, having finished the building, like the Everest Hall, we need to be potentially available to groups that want to use it in various different ways. It's a shame that it has come across as being in some sort of competition with the Everest Hall. I don't think that's the intention at all. It's a case of it's a different building in a field that is owned by the community. One of the other large aspects of it was that it should allow, we were spending about around £400 to £500 a year maintaining the grass on the field for people to use the field, but it wasn't being excessively used because there was no electric on there and no toilets. We now have car parking, hard standing, a toilet facility that's open 24/7 on the outside of the building, and electric, you know, which can be made available for village fetes and whatever else may want to be held on the community field. The other thing which I wanted to bring, and I had it all uploaded to the computer, but unfortunately, obviously, I can't share it by the screen. But I did, after yesterday's further responses from the respondents, decide to do a little scaled map, to show quite conclusively, and I'm sure the licensing team is already aware of this, that the pavilion where it's sited on the edge of the village actually only has one property within 100 metres of it. When you draw a circle, which I've done quite carefully, and there is one property that is within 100 metres of that building. The Everest Hall, on the other hand, which simply by default is the old Victorian school right in the centre of the village, and it has 11 properties, residential properties, within 100 metres of it. It has one property that's actually attached to it by a common wall. It's also one of the respondents, Sue Smith, will obviously clarify that she's aware that she lives within 100 metres of the Everest Hall, but not within 100 metres of the pavilion. There's been a lot of representation about our inability or lack of openness with the premises licence. And I do want to say that, I apologise if people felt that was the case. It hasn't been that easy with the COVID. I know the notice about the minutes of the parish council was pinned on the Everest Hall board within a week of the meeting because I did it myself. I can't speak for the clerk on the website, and I apologise if it wasn't displayed in timely enough on the website. I know that the community trust sent any information to Lambertines by the 19th or 20th of November at the deadline, and I'm sorry again that the publication wasn't distributed till the 15th of December, but I'm not on that committee, and none of us have got any control over when that was distributed. And I think that it speaks quite a lot of volumes. Unfortunately, I'd much rather not go into this at all, but it's, the Everest Hall in 2017 had a premises licence granted with, as far as I know, no representation.
Mr. Bevan, it's Councillor Roberts, the chair. Could you, I think you're rambling a little bit now. Can you just condense it a little bit and bring it to a conclusion, please?
I've pretty much finished, and I just want to make it clear that a lot of the people making representations live within a much shorter distance of the Everest Hall.
Yeah.
I know I can't speak to who's moved since, but they do live closer to a place that had no representations for noise or any other things to do with antisocial behaviour or lack of ability to run a premises licence or drug taking and any of the other issues or child protection. That's all part of it. There was no issues there. There was no issues with the narrowness of the road or the lighting of the road or anything else towards access to that building, which is beyond the building we're applying for. And that's trying to give some context. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that. Now then, I'll ask those present. They'll be given the opportunity to ask any relevant questions, similar to one of the questions were asked of the licensing officer. So, licensing officer, have you any questions of Mr. Bevan, the applicant?
No questions.
Thank you. Any other members of the present, the public, any questions?
Yes, please.
Of Mr. Bevan?
Yes, please.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Sue Smith from Thistledown in the village?
Yeah, can you come closer to your mic? You seem a long way away.
Oh, I don't know where the mic is.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
that any better?
That's much better. That's better.
Okay, you're going to get to see my nose, and that's about it.
That's fine. As long as we can hear you, that's be much better. Okay, off you go. Off you go.
Just listening to Mr. Bevan's statement,
Yeah.
there's a lot of reference to the community-led questionnaire or plan that was done back in 15-16.
You're asking Mr. Bevan the question of what he's just presented.
Okay. 59, almost 51% of those surveyed said they didn't want any new building at all. I wonder what his views are on that. 71% of the respondents said they wanted money spent on Everest Hall rather than on a new building. And everybody that responded said they wanted a pub or a cafe. So I don't see how he can reconcile his statements just now with some of the other facts contained within the community-led plan. The other thing is the building is beautiful. There's no disputing it. It's a lovely building. It's a timber-framed building which has been very well insulated from a thermal point of view. To be honest, it could have been.
Can I just stop you there? You're going to have your chance to address the committee shortly.
Okay.
If this is really questions.
Okay, so why isn't the building soundproofed?
Okay, is that it?
Well, yes. I mean, I may live within closer to the Everest Hall than the pavilion, but I can hear people talking on the pavilion patio. I can hear car radios in the car park there. I can hear things very clearly from my property, and I don't think that Councillor Bevan quite gets that.
Okay. And is there any other questions to Mr. Bevan from anybody else, please?
Yes, I'm Michael Tree. I would like to ask Mr. Bevan, in view of the sound disturbance we've had, whether he could now guarantee not to allow such sound disturbance in the future. Okay.
Right, and that's the questions to you, Mr. Bevan, from Ms. Smith and Mr. Tree. Are you able to answer?
I can try. Should I, try to take them one at a time? I think, yes, I did. Ms. Smith, that relate to the community-led plan, and clearly it was something that we discussed quite significantly during that period when it was produced. I think that you'd find that the questions asked possibly would have, to some extent, put some people off from the idea of wanting a different building, because I think in the context of the question that was asked, it said something along the lines of, would you like to have a new building on the community field, which would cause significant new fundraising events to be able to be built? And I think, that the reality is that we've managed to achieve the new build with funds that already existed within the community trust that we were finding difficult to spend otherwise, and voluntary labour, which obviously was hugely significant, and an 80% grant from the leader funding. So I think if the same question was asked now, I think it was interesting that perhaps 29% people thought it would be, even in spite of the fact of all the costs that could have been, there was no planning, there was no hard standing on the field. It was literally just a farm field, effectively, at that point when the questionnaire was asked. And I think, I viewed it probably different, it was before you moved here, but I viewed it at the time as being, actually, I'm quite surprised that 29% of people would want that, because it was just a farmer's field, and a lot of people wouldn't have the vision or the idea that anything could really occur on there with our community. So I think, I don't think there's an idea that Everest Hall can't continue to serve its purpose. It's a well-used hall in its own right, and money does get spent on it. Money's been spent on it this year. And it should continue. I'm just, we have an alternative venue with a field, which is probably the difference between the two venues. I think you've got one venue which is a building to be used as a traditional village hall with a car park outside, and we have another building to be used as a
Mr. Bevan, can you answer Mr. Tree's question about noise, please, if it's possible?
Noise, we had a meeting, once the application went live, we had a meeting on site with Rob Boland on the 20th of November. He walked the sort of distances paced away from the building. He looked.
Can you just say
all aspects
who that
around
person is?
Pardon?
Could you just say who that person is you had the meeting with?
His name is Rob Boland. He's the Environmental Protection Officer for Shropshire Council.
Okay. Okay.
He contacted us after the meeting and said he was minded to refuse our premises licence application, and he said that we need, in order for him to be able to accept the application, we needed to bring back the hours to 9:30 when there'd been any amplified music or anything outside of the building. The windows and doors must be closed other than for the egress and ingress of people after that time in the evening. We, as a community trust, shared that information amongst our trusts, and we agreed that we would comply with that condition, and we adjusted our application to do that. So that was, he was outside the building, he was inside. One of the trustees was working inside with a radio. He couldn't hear that while he was outside. I agree with Mr. Tree that we haven't got specific acoustic soundproofing insulation, but we've over-insulated to what was required for building control on thermal insulation. and I think, to come to Michael Tree's question about sound disturbance and, can we guarantee that this won't be an issue in the future? I think Michael, along with everybody in the village, was unfortunately, basing most of what they've said on an open air, effectively an open air event, which took place in the field with a sort of kind of open teepee. It was a nice evening, and clearly it was completely outside. That won't occur again. I can give them an assurance that the building is designed and intended to be used as the building. If the building can't comply and the people, there won't be marquees going up on the field at any time to hold extensively large weddings in a marquee, which is a structure that has absolutely no acoustic proofing at all, as we all know. It has happened very intermittently in the past. Yorath Water's son got married in a marquee there. All time. Hello.
Can you just keep to the question? I think you've answered it. But say a few more seconds if you want to sum up, or are you all right?
No, I mean, I think we can give an assurance that now that it's changed completely from 2 years ago when the field was being used without a building on it, and that is a solution. Okay.
Well, I'll ask my colleagues committee. Any questions of Mr. Bevan, the applicant?
Roy Allcroft, who will actually be in charge in the building when alcohol sales are taking place?
Basically we'll be the DPS, so we'll be the designated premises supervisors, the community trust itself. Currently 3 trustees. We've got applicants at the moment, we believe, who are trying to join the trust. They haven't joined yet, but we can be up to 5 of us. Our plan is to have a trustee either on site at any time when alcohol sales, or available to be on call to go should there be any issues at all. And that is what we plan to do. We do have absolutely the knowledge of what's required from the DPS, and we do intend to rigorously uphold those conditions.
So if an outside body hired the hall, for instance, would one of your named trustees be in there to supervise the noise level with the patio doors open, and B, supervise the sale of alcohol? Yeah, they would either be in there or on call if needed. So I mean, in our type of community events, one of trustee would highly likely be in the event, and would, at least if they weren't there, would have a right to be there if it was a private party. So they may well choose to be there, or at least call in on
2 or 3 times during the evening to make sure it was being effectively managed.
Okay, thank you.
There would be some quite rigorous terms and conditions which we haven't written yet because we don't know what will be granted today. But you know, those terms and conditions will be absolutely clear to any hirers as to what's involved.
Thank you.
Councillor Simon Jones, do you want to speak?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Simon Jones. Question just for clarification. Is the intention to have a bar there all the time, which is open to the public, or is your intention only for if a function wants a bar that they will then have one?
Yeah, I think the intention is that, you know, if there's a function of any sort that requires a bar, we've already, you know, got what we need in order to provide one. This is the essence of what we're trying to achieve, really. Like most community buildings, I think.
Yeah, so secondary to that then is, from that, am I right in thinking that the intention is that any alcohol for sale will be bought in by the hirer of the hall rather than actually being stored on the premises?
It could be brought in by the hirer, possibly, or it could be brought in by the community trust if they were running an event which required a bar. So it could be either, but it would be only for sale on the premises.
And would the intention be to sell it from the, looking at the plan of the building, is it just the kitchen area where it would be sold from using the serving hatch, or do you intend having a bar?
It would be a type of pop-up bar situation, which would be a temporary, some sort of temporary counter that would be, you know, if you like, put up for the event.
Mm-hmm. And if it's the committee intending to holding a function to have it, are you intending to store sort of alcohol on the premises?
No, we've looked at. No, I don't think so. We've looked at. You know, the sort of risks of that, and probably that wouldn't occur.
Right. So it's not like a pot room or anything?
No.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. Mr. Bevan, Councillor Keith Roberts, my concern is, I think, the balcony. How are you going to supervise that? Because a nice evening, there might be a function that they're obviously party or whatever, and they want to go outside because it's nice sunny evening, and noise could occur quite easily. How are you going to monitor that if you get the license, that balcony is included in the liquor license area? How are you going to monitor that if you've only got, shall we say, that the trustees are running it, so you've got 2 trustees there running the bar? How are you going to supervise that? Because you've got no CCTV, you can't see what's going on up there really. And any comments?
I think, you know, it will be manageable. I mean, we'll have signage to, you know, recognise that would people be, you know, quiet, leaving the building and quiet outside it for the benefit of local residents. And I think it'll be clear, you know, there's double doors all the way along the front opening onto the patio area, which will, on those evenings that you're suggesting, probably at least 1 or 2 of them will be open, and we'll be able to hear what's going on outside, which probably will be very similar to what's inside. And from, you know, there is, as we were advised that, you know, there is a difference between times of day. So hence why the Environmental Protection Officer, you know, made the stipulation that 9:30 at night was a time when things become different for people, either who are attending a function or also who are living in nearby houses. Yeah.
If you've got a sports function on the field, I don't know, 5-a-side football competition or anything, how are you going to physically stop people from carrying alcohol from that balcony to go and see for dad to go and watch his son play football? How are you going to stop them from carrying alcohol across to the field?
We'll have to, you know, put something in place to ensure that doesn't happen, possibly even not have the sale of alcohol until after the football's finished, or whatever it takes. We'll we're not applying for a license for people to drink all the way around the field. So we will have to enforce that, and that'll be either successfully done by notices and talking to people who are at the event, or if that doesn't work, we'll obviously not be able to open the bar until after the field stops being used.
Okay, so you have thought of it a little bit. The other thing is fire inspection. Has that taken place? Has the fire service or somebody inspected it?
Yeah, we're waiting on, because of the COVID, we were trying to tie it in with actually, oddly enough, an inspection here, but we haven't had the inspection yet. We're still waiting for the fire officer to actually visit.
Right, so that I'm talking now as a member of the fire authority. So that's your local fire station. That would be Bishop's Castle, would it?
Clan.
Clan. Ah, so you come from Clan. So you have you have contacted the fire service and you've requested that.
We've not from Clan Fire Station, but we've an independent officer to verify that what fire extinguishers or anything else we need in the building. But we could easily contact Clan.
Oh, okay.
We've got a fire. We've got all the fire. Obviously, it's past. We've got all the fire detection equipment in there, and we've got all the brake blast things for fire exits and the low emergency lighting, obviously to do with building control. It's installed.
Okay. So you've got an independent company doing that for you, right? The other thing I'm a little concerned about. My colleague, Councillor Jones, asked about the sale of alcohol, and you mentioned that if a private party were hiring the hall, there might be a possibility that they could bring their own alcohol in and sell it. So who would supervise that sale? Yeah,
I would envisage my experience of that happening is either they actually hiring a event company to do that for them, to run the alcohol side of it, or the local pub does it. I wouldn't imagine that that those would be when they would then have their own license.
Yeah, but the other sort, I was a little bit confused in the way that your answer came across, but no. So it would be covered by an outside caterer or a local license pub licensee. That type of thing. Yes. Okay. Thank you. I think that's me. Any other questions from my fellow colleagues? No.
Not from me, Councillor Allcroft. I'm just a bit concerned. Picking up, there's an awful lot of things that are being put in place or being envisaged to look at, or probable ways in which the system's going to work. I would have thought at this stage, to be honest, you would have firm plans written almost as to how you intend to supervise all these things, from the balconies to people around the field drinking alcohol, the noise levels, etc. Knowing the complaints you've had or the comments from some of the residents, I would have thought you would have mitigated those by having a set procedure, and I'm surprised also that you haven't got CCTV there.
Yeah, we did look. Shall I answer that now?
Yes, please, if that's okay, Chair.
We did look at CCTV, and we made assessments based on the advice on the various websites about the premises licensing. Certainly, there's a historically very low level of crime and disorder within the community, fortunately, and the village of Lamborghini, and that will be in relation to places like the Everest Hall, where they haven't had any problems, and we at this stage won't be storing alcohol in there. We don't envisage issues that require us to have CCTV, and at the moment we don't believe it's a necessary thing. Your question about all the rules and regulations of hiring the building is, I can see where you're coming from. Our absolute bottom line on the whole of this as a community trust is to ensure that we do adhere to and enforce the 4 licensing objectives in all of their aspects of them, and that we carry out our duty to our community correctly in that respect. And according to how the license that we actually get granted today, we will then write a robust set. As I said, we've got more trustees trying to join the trust at the moment. It's very difficult for us all to get together, as you know, and have meetings. We're shut down anyway with the COVID, so between now, today, and the spring, we have every intention of getting the full and very, very robust, which can be seen by any respondents and anybody who wants to hire the building.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Right, does that include all the questions from committee? It's quiet, so I'll move on. I'm now going to ask Mr. Tree if he would introduce himself and present his case, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name's Michael Tree. I live very close to the community field site. I have submitted a written representation. I stand by every single word of that representation, and I would be very happy to answer any questions on it. And I would like, if I may, to draw your particular attention to just 4 points, if I may. One which has caused us awful problems is the disturbance of music and amplified sound. I would suggest that this should only ever take place, amplified sound, within the building and not outside, for the benefit of the whole village, where in the past, and I know Mr. Bevan has made light of this, but we have suffered very much. Even half a mile away, there was considerable disturbance. This was allowed by the trustees. They have to get their act together to have firm proposals, not just pious hopes, as we've just heard, to make sure that the disturbance doesn't have very harmful effects on the lives of all people around. There is no soundproofing inside the building. Thermal insulation, yes, but no acoustic insulation, and they took no acoustic advice when they were building the building. I would have thought that it's absolutely essential that the trustees have a firm plan and have one of their trustees not just on call where he puts his answer phone on, but is actually in the building to control it and take full responsibility for it. I would hope that the committee could impose proper decibel levels on noise outside the building, say within 10 yards. After that, there should be no sound. Also, on the question of sound, there is a thing called an automatic sound level monitor. Now, this thing plugs into the main system and will cut off the supply to the amplifying machines if the sound goes above a certain level. And I think this is absolutely essential that this is addressed properly and fully. Otherwise, we have a repeat performance of the chaos that we've had before. So that's item one. Number two, I can only emphasize again that the field on which the pavilion is set was given for sports and recreational use, not for private parties, for people outside the community. And I would hope that all the events would be sports related, as we've been promised again and again and again, and for our local community, and not shoehorning into the middle of our community other functions by other communities. Number three, the trustees have mentioned that this is a blank canvas, and as it's a new building, this is perfectly understandable. They don't know who and what and why is going to come along and ask facilities to use the building. And I would argue, therefore, that instead of having a premises license as we see now, which is such a broad one, just in case obscure calls come along, it would be far better during this period where the trustees are getting to know the building, getting to know the calls made upon it, that the matter is dealt with by a temporary events license, so that they can then gain their experience. And you've heard from Mr. Bevan that they are not experienced in this, they're badly prepared for it. Now, if over the next few years they apply on each occasion for an event, right, they will learn how to manage it properly, and we will not have the disturbance, hopefully, in future that we've had in the past. And then the fourth item is related to alcohol, and there I would argue that it's restricted to inside the building and not outside, that there must always be a trustee present, not just on call, but actually inside, taking full responsibility for that. You know what young people are. You wouldn't believe it, but I can remember being an irresponsible young person myself. And once you've had a bit of alcohol and a bit of freedom, then the consideration of neighbours doesn't come high on the priority list. I would like to finish by saying that we wish the trustees every good fortune on the management of this building for the benefit of the whole community, and hope that they can please act as a considerate neighbour, entering into full liaison with the Everest Hall and with the residents in Llanfair. There are only 20 houses in Llanfair. It takes 20 minutes to send a letter around to the lot of them. Another 5 in Loyney. There's no reason why there couldn't be really perfect liaison between the trustees and the residents, who, if it goes wrong, they have to pick up the pieces, and it's their lives that can get into a right old mess if things go wrong, as they have gone on in the past. But I would like to emphasize that I feel so strongly that if this is handled correctly, it should be for the benefit of everybody, and I don't see why that shouldn't happen, provided it's approached in the right way. A temporary events license for perhaps the next couple of years, and then when they know how closely they need to focus on the events that are coming up, then a premises license is granted. I don't think that this is the right time for a premises license at all. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful to you. I will now switch off, but I will answer any questions you have to give to me.
Thank you, Mr. Tree. Yeah, I'll just ask any questions of Mr. Tree, and firstly, the licensing officer.
No questions, Chair.
Thank you, Ross. Mr. Bevan, the applicant, any questions of Mr. Tree?
I think it's probably just a matter of all of us recognising that any sound issues that have occurred in the past, which have been admittedly troublesome for people, and we recognise that, but they've been few and far between, and they've also been before the building was built, when it was an open field and a completely different situation to what we now have. You know, I'd also like to say that, you know, yes, sports related is very much part of it because of the field, but it will include things like the, you know, the wakes, which is a village fete, and other little children's parties and whatever else, you know, is required.
Thank you. Is that it? Thank you, Mr. Bevan.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you. Committee, my colleagues, any questions of Mr. Tree?
Roy Allcroft, no, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Simon Jones, you all right?
Yeah, no, I'm fine, thank you. No questions.
Excellent. Thank you. Right.
You're just on mute, Councillor Roberts. Councillor Roberts, you were just on mute, so we couldn't hear what you were just saying.
Yeah. Mr. Tree, do you want to respond? Do you want to respond to anything?
No. I didn't hear a word just now from your good self, but I'm very happy to answer any questions you have.
No, the committee doesn't have any questions, and the licensing officer doesn't. And Mr. Bevan, did you get his statement?
Yes, I did hear that. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's all right then. Right, let's just checking that everybody's happy, and we'll move on. I'll now ask Miss Smith to introduce herself and present her case, please.
Hello, yes, I'm Sue Smith, and I live at Thistledown in Lanvale Waterdine, which is next door but one to the pavilion and the field. I can see the pavilion very clearly from my garden, and I can hear everything that goes on so far very well indeed. Mr. Tree has pretty much covered a lot of my concerns, but I think my main concern is obviously about noise, and also about the lack of openness from the trust. I've only lived in the village since 2018, but my experience of them has been that they are not open and they are not communicative in any way, shape or form. The only contact I've had with the trust is them coming to ask to dig up my drive in 2018 as I was moving in order to give them a power supply, which of course I did, I agreed to. It's my belief that they did try to keep the this application a secret from the residents until it was effectively too late for representations to be made. We only found out via Mr. Tree because he had a call from Kirsty Bell, who works with Rob Boland in the Environmental Protection Office. And that's when we discovered that the notice hadn't been displayed properly. Effectively, the trust didn't follow any proper means of communicating the application to residents. And the fact that Mr. Bevan or the trustees in their letter to the residents subsequent to in the process of this hearing process, using COVID as an excuse to not communicate with residents, I think is just terrible, because the parish council were quite happily seeking public consultation on another planning matter during October, and Mr. Bevan is himself a parish councillor, so he knew it was entirely possible to talk to people by whatever means. Effectively, they chose not to. This hasn't engendered great feelings of trust in the trustees locally, and the failure to communicate has led to a lot of mistrust and a lot of bad feeling. The fact that when complaints were made, both indirectly and directly, about the noise from the wedding in 2019, they were made but completely ignored. I never heard a word from anybody subsequent to that wedding, and my complaints via my neighbour next door in Fairfield, and trying to contact Mr. Bevan directly by telephone. It's very upsetting, and it doesn't fill one with much goodwill towards their intentions for the building because of a lack of trust. The other thing I'm very concerned about is the effective management of this asset, based on the fact that, you know, there was no notice about the wedding, there was no apology for the noise disturbance. I do feel that it's just a case of we're going to do what we want, and you can suffer the consequences. I understand that Lambfair Parish Council has co-opted somebody from another council, and this person has volunteered to be part of the management committee for the pavilion. I just wonder what level of due diligence has been taken with regards to this person, and certain things have come to light about this person that really are very worrying.
Miss Smith, I think we're wandering a little bit.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any other? Would you like to sum up a little bit?
Well, it's effectively very, very poor communication on the behalf of the trust. Very little regard for residents living close to the pavilion and the field, and yeah, I think that's it really. And also, sorry, finally, there's no structure of a management committee. There's no experience, and evidently no procedures in place either. It's quite worrying. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll now give the opportunity for people to ask questions of Miss Smith. Licensing officer, any questions?
No questions, Chair.
Mr. Bevan, the applicant, any questions of Miss Smith?
The question I'd like to ask is about, I am sorry, and I'm genuinely sorry that you feel that that we haven't done that very well on public consultation. I don't think, we could have done a lot more. There's certain things happened outside of our control, like the Lamborghini being late distributed, as I've already said, and we did initially put the first notice on the building itself, and that was, the minute that was appeared not to be correct, we moved 2 notices to be seen from the entrance to the field on both sides, and they could well be still there now. We've really, Robert Gwilt is a trustee who lives in the parish, walks through the village every day, has been, as you know, working there most of the autumn, as you say, with his little radio going. He's approachable at any time, and he'll have a chat to anybody, and has done with many people. So, we're certainly not secretive. We're here to serve the community as trustees. Anybody who had any concerns could contact any one of us, and I know that may seem difficult, but I live within a mile of the village, as you know, and we're on the Charity Commission website with our phone numbers. We are servants that can be found and contacted about things that are of concern. There is a limit to how many people you can write to and get round everybody's houses and talk to, and the COVID has made a difference. It's made a difference, I'm sorry to say, within all communities as to how they can talk to each other. The councillor, Darren Knight, was appointed to the council was co-opted. I have no idea what the issues are with him, but it was, it wasn't a trust decision that he become onto the management committee of this building. It was something that was done by the parish council, so I can't can't comment on that.
Okay. Committee, any questions of Ms. Smith? No. And no. Ms. Smith wants to respond, I think. Go on.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I desperately to keep my hand up. That last comment about Mr. Bevan and Mr. Knipe and him not knowing of any issue. I actually spoke to Knighton Town Council clerk recently, and he told me, that Mr. Bevan had spoken to one of the Knighton Town councillors about Darren Knipe and was told he was dangerous and not to touch him with a barge pole. So the fact that I don't think that's appropriate to this application. Well, I'm sorry, but it shows you should be saying that. I'm sorry, but does Mr. Bevan deny that he spoke to Knighton Town Council about Mr. Knipe? Yeah. Okay.
I will answer that because it's not. you know, finding this a bit ridiculous. But I did speak to a councillor who I happened to see in Knighton, not officially. And I don't know Darren Knight. He didn't come to us from another council. He happens to be clerk, as far as I know, of Clun Town Council. But he lives in the parish. He was eligible to be co-opted onto our council. And without, you know, I do know what the regulations are. We should aim to be a full council of 7. He was the only person who came forward to be
Mr. Bevan, I think that's enough. Thank you. I'll now move on and invite Mr. Waters to introduce himself and present his case, please.
My name is Yorwith Waters, the chairman of Everest Hall Committee. My only concern is, as I mentioned earlier, that events at the pavilion could duplicate what we have at Everest Hall, because our hall is running very efficient, obviously closed at the moment due to the virus. But can Mr. Bevan guarantee that there won't be any bad feelings between the two of us, that we can either work together, and even if they want to come to our committee meetings and discuss issues which relates to both, because at the end of the day, we would like to see everything running smoothly. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Licensing officer, any questions of Mr. Waters?
No questions, but obviously we need to be looking at the 4 licensing objectives, not other premises. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Bevan, anything you'd like to say to Mr. Waters?
Yeah, I take Yora's points. They're perfectly reasonable on behalf of the Everest Hall Management Committee. It's difficult as a trustee, but I think I can speak for the community trust as a whole, and for certain say that, you know, we do serve the whole community. The Everest Hall Management Committee also serves the whole community, and we would wish to try and work together wherever possible to ensure that, you know, we're not stepping on each other's toes in any way, and also clearly not trying to duplicate events, which would be fairly ridiculous.
Thank you. Committee, any questions of Mr. Waters?
Not from me, Councillor Allcroft.
Yeah. Councillor Simon Jones, if you're still there, any questions?
I'm here. No questions.
Okay, thank you. And I haven't got any questions of Mr. Waters. Right. Now ask the licensing officer if there's anything you wish to clarify.
Thanks, Chair. Nothing to clarify. Like I say, we need to, the original report that I did with the appendix attached, each premise is on its merit, and we need to look at the 4 licensing objectives.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ross. Quickly then, are there any points that Mr. Tree wishes to clarify?
I'd just like to ask Mr. Waters, was there any communication between him and the Community Trust before this license application was put in? Okay, Mr. Waters, could you answer that?
Yes, I spoke to the trustees, the Community Pavilion trustees, in the early days, and I questioned this pavilion being built against the business that's been run at Everest Hall, and I was told that the pavilion would be an incentive to Everest Hall and not an obstruction. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Tree. Right, are there any questions or any points that Ms. Smith wishes to clarify? Ms. Smith?
Oh, sorry. No, I think
no?
I've said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, then I'll move on then to Mr. Waters. Anything you wish to clarify?
No, nothing, thank you.
And the applicant, Mr. Bevan, are there any points that you wish to add or confirm? Or are you okay?
If I could, May, I'd simply and absolutely like to clarify and confirm that from the Community Trust perspective, we are absolutely, obviously, as you would expect, committed to adhering to the 4 licensing objectives and whatever it requires for us to do that. That is something we obviously will do Just want to make that absolutely clear.
Okay, thank you for that. And Solicitor Louise Prince, anything to clarify or points you want to make?
Only just to say, Chair, that when you're making your decision as members of the hearing, maybe it needs to be mindful of the decision making, standard decision making, and that you make sure a decision is made in line with promoting the licensing objectives as set out in the licensing officer's report.
Okay, thank you, Louise. Right, if there are no more speakers, members will now withdraw to make their decision. We will close the meeting. All interested parties will be advised of the decision in writing within 5 working days of this hearing. So we're now going to close the public meeting. Emily?
Thank you, Chair. I'll end the live session.